"Security, please escort my daughter out. She's causing a scene." Those were my father's words as 300 guests stared at me in stunned silence. I stood there in my best dress, the navy blue one I'd saved 3 months to buy, shaking with humiliation as 2 security guards in black suits approached my table at the back of the grand ballroom. 300 people. Politicians, business owners, millionaires. All watching as Rob Hampton, CEO of Hampton Industries, had his own daughter removed from his retirement gala like some kind of criminal. My hands were trembling. My face was burning. I could hear whispers spreading through the crowd like wildfire. "That's his daughter? The teacher?" How embarrassing. But what happened next would change everything. My quiet husband Morgan, the man who helped me grade papers every night, who drove a Honda Civic and lived in a modest apartment, stood up slowly. He straightened his tie, looked directly at my father on that stage, and said 5 words that would destroy my father's world. "I think there's been a mistake." Now, before I tell you what Morgan revealed that night and how it completely flipped the script on everyone who had humiliated me, I need you to understand how I got to that moment. Because this wasn't just about one terrible night. This was 12 years in the making. If you want to hear how my humble husband brought down my millionaire father and turned me from the family embarrassment into the most powerful woman in that room, make sure you subscribe, because this story gets wild. But first, let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where your own family made you feel like your career, your passion, wasn't good enough? Drop a comment and let me know, because what happened to me that night might sound familiar. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Rachel Hampton, I'm 35 years old, and I've been teaching 3rd grade for 12 years. My name is Rachel Hampton. I'm 35 and I've been teaching 3rd grade for 12 years. I know what you're thinking. Teaching isn't glamorous. It doesn't pay well. The salary barely covers my student loans and rent. But those kids? They're everything to me. When 8-year-old Gerald finally reads his first complete sentence after months of struggling. When shy little Emma raises her hand for the first time all year. When Tyler, who comes to school hungry every morning, lights up because I keep granola bars in my desk just for him. Every breakthrough, every aha moment, every hug goodbye at the end of the day, that's my world. That's what gets me up at 5:30 every morning. My father, Rob Hampton, spent 40 years climbing the corporate ladder. He's CEO of Hampton Industries, a construction company worth millions. Growing up, I thought he was proud of me. I was valedictorian of my high school class. I got my master's in education with a 4.0 GPA. I won Teacher of the Year 3 times in my district. I remember him bragging to his golf buddies about his brilliant daughter. But somewhere along the way, his pride turned to disappointment. Teaching wasn't successful enough for the Hampton name. Not prestigious enough. Not profitable enough. When he married Aaliyah 5 years ago, everything changed. She brought her daughter Jossie into our family, a 28-year-old corporate lawyer who made 6 figures defending big corporations, drove a brand new BMW, and wore designer suits that cost more than I made in a month. Suddenly, family dinners became competitions I couldn't win. It started small. Thanksgiving introductions went from, "This is my daughter Rachel, she's amazing with kids," to just, "This is Rachel, she teaches." At Christmas, Jossie got the designer purse, the expensive jewelry, the latest iPhone. I got a $50 gift card to Target. When I'd try to share stories about my students' achievements, the conversation would somehow shift to Jossie's latest court victory or her promotion at the law firm. But I told myself it didn't matter. I had Morgan. I met Morgan 3 years ago at a little coffee shop called Brew and Books, right across from Lincoln Elementary where I teach. I was there every morning at 6:15, grading papers before school started. He was always in the corner booth, quietly reading. Not scrolling through his phone like everyone else, actually reading. Education journals, articles about child development, research on literacy programs. I finally worked up the courage to ask him what he did for work. He said he worked in tech but never talked about it much. I assumed he was some kind of programmer or IT support, maybe website design. He drove a modest Honda Civic, lived in a simple 1-bedroom apartment across town, and spent his evenings helping me grade papers and create lesson plans. He was perfect because he saw me. Really saw me. When other people heard elementary school teacher and immediately changed the subject, Morgan asked about my students by name. He remembered that Sophia was struggling with math anxiety and that Steve's parents were going through a divorce. He celebrated with me when my class scored higher on reading assessments than they ever had before. When we got married last year in a small ceremony, Dad seemed genuinely happy. He walked me down the aisle, gave a heartfelt speech about finding someone who appreciated my unique gifts, and even seemed to like Morgan's quiet, respectful nature. But then he promised me something that meant everything: a position on the board of his new education foundation. $5 million dedicated to improving schools across the state. Finally, I thought, he understood my work mattered. Finally, he was going to use his business success to support what I'd been fighting for my entire career. If you're wondering how this promise led to that humiliating night at his retirement gala, hit that subscribe button because the betrayal gets so much worse before it gets better. But let me ask you this. Have you ever had a family member who just couldn't understand why you chose passion over profit? Because what my father did next showed me exactly what he really thought of teachers like me. The changes were subtle at first, but they cut deep. The retirement gala was supposed to be Dad's big farewell. 300 guests packed into the grand ballroom downtown: mayors, city council members, business leaders, major donors. This was Rob Hampton's victory lap after 40 years of building Hampton Industries from nothing into a multi-million-dollar empire. I spent weeks preparing for this night. I bought that navy blue dress I told you about, spent hours at the salon getting my hair done, and practiced my speech over and over in the mirror. The speech I thought I'd give when Dad announced my position on the Education Foundation board. I had it memorized. 3 minutes about how we could transform public education with proper funding and support. Morgan seemed nervous all week leading up to the gala. He kept checking his phone, taking mysterious calls in the other room, pacing around our apartment like he was worried about something. I figured he was just uncomfortable with crowds. He'd never been to one of Dad's corporate events before, and 300 people in fancy clothes making small talk wasn't exactly his scene. We arrived at the grand ballroom at 6 sharp. The place was stunning. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, centerpieces that probably cost more than I made in a week. A jazz quartet played softly in the corner. Everything was perfect. Until I saw the seating chart. My name, Rachel Hampton, had been moved from table 1, the VIP table right in front of the stage, to table 15. Way in the back corner, practically hidden behind a pillar. I stared at that seating chart for a full minute, thinking there had to be some mistake. Aaliyah appeared beside me in her designer gown, smiling that perfectly practiced smile. "Oh, Rachel, I hope you don't mind the seating change. We needed more room for important guests at the VIP table." "You understand. Important guests." The words hit me like a slap. I wasn't important enough to sit with my own father at his retirement dinner. I swallowed the hurt. I'd gotten good at that over the years, and made my way to table 15. Right next to the caterer's station, where servers rushed back and forth carrying trays. The noise was constant, the view of the stage partially blocked, and I couldn't help but notice that most of the people at my table were +1s and distant relatives nobody really knew. Morgan squeezed my hand as we sat down. His jaw was tight, and I could see he was angry about the seating situation too. He leaned over and whispered, "Just wait." I thought he meant wait for Dad's announcement about the foundation. Wait for my moment to shine. I had no idea what he really meant. The dinner dragged on forever. Course after course, while speakers took turns praising Dad's business acumen, his charitable giving, his leadership in the community. I barely touched my food. My stomach was in knots with anticipation. Finally, Dad took the stage for his main speech. The room went quiet, except for the soft clink of champagne glasses. He looked distinguished up there in his custom tuxedo, silver hair perfectly styled, commanding the attention of every person in that ballroom. He thanked everyone for coming. He talked about his journey from a small construction crew to building skyscrapers across 3 states. He mentioned his legacy, his impact on the community, his plans for retirement. Then he announced the Education Foundation. Education has always been close to my heart, he said, and my pulse quickened. That's why I'm donating $5 million to establish the Hampton Excellence in Education Foundation. $5 million. The number echoed through the ballroom. People were impressed. I could hear the murmurs of approval, the quiet applause. This was it. My heart was racing as he continued. And I'm proud to announce that leading this foundation's board will be someone brilliant, accomplished, and perfectly suited for this responsibility. I started to stand up. This was my moment. 12 years of teaching, 3 Teacher of the Year awards, a master's degree in education. Finally, Dad was going to recognize that my work mattered. My stepdaughter, Jossie Morrison, Esquire. The world stopped. 300 people erupted in applause as Jossie gracefully walked to the stage in her red designer gown, her blonde hair swept up in an elegant chignon. She waved like she was accepting an Oscar, beaming with confidence and pride. Jossie, who had never taught a day in her life, who had openly mocked teachers at family dinners, calling us glorified babysitters and people who couldn't cut it in the real world, who made more money in a month defending corporations than I made in a year educating children. I sat there in shock, watching her shake Dad's hand and accept a crystal plaque while photographers snapped pictures. The applause seemed to go on forever. People were standing now, giving her an ovation for, what? Being a lawyer? Making 6 figures? Marrying into the right family? I couldn't help myself. The words came out before I could stop them. Dad, what about our conversation? You promised me that position. My voice cut through the applause like a knife. The entire ballroom turned to stare at me. 300 faces looking back at this woman in the cheap dress sitting next to the catering station, interrupting the evening's grand moment. Elia's face went white. Jossie looked mortified, frozen on stage with that crystal plaque in her hands. Dad's expression shifted from surprise to anger, faster than I'd ever seen. His voice boomed through the microphone. Rachel, please sit down. This is neither the time nor place for this discussion. But I couldn't stop. 12 years of being overlooked, dismissed, treated like my career didn't matter. It all came pouring out. I'm the teacher here. I'm the one who understands education. She's never even been inside a classroom except to drop off legal papers. The silence was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop in that massive ballroom. 300 people staring at the family drama unfolding before their eyes. That's when Dad's face turned red with embarrassment and fury. That's when he said those words that will haunt me forever. Security, please escort my daughter out. She's causing a scene. And that's when my quiet, humble husband, Morgan, stood up and changed everything. If you want to see how Morgan completely destroyed my father's world in the next 5 minutes, make sure you're subscribed because what he revealed shocked everyone in that room. But tell me, have you ever been promised something important by family, only to watch them give it to someone else who didn't deserve it? Because what happened next was the sweetest revenge I've ever witnessed. Those 2 security guards were walking toward me when Morgan stood up. But this wasn't the Morgan I knew, the quiet man who helped me grade papers in our tiny apartment. This Morgan moved with purpose, with confidence I'd never seen before. He walked calmly to the front of that massive ballroom, while 300 people watched in stunned silence. Every eye in the room followed him as he approached the stage where my father and Jossie still stood frozen. Ladies and gentlemen, Morgan said, his voice carrying across the room without a microphone, I apologize for the interruption. Allow me to introduce myself properly. I'm Morgan Chen, CEO of TechEdu Corporation. The gasps were audible throughout the ballroom. TechEdu Corporation, the tech giant revolutionizing educational software worldwide, the company that had just been mentioned as providing the $5 million for Dad's foundation. My quiet, humble husband, who drove a Honda Civic and lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, was worth more than everyone in that room combined. I felt my legs go weak. My mouth fell open as I stared at this man I thought I knew. I've been working in education technology for 15 years, Morgan continued, his voice steady and confident, nothing like the soft-spoken man I married. I've personally invested over $200 million in educational initiatives across the globe. I met my wife Rachel when she was beta testing our literacy software at Lincoln Elementary. She had no idea who I was, just that I cared about kids learning to read. Everything suddenly made sense. The education journals he was always reading weren't just interest pieces, they were industry research. The late-night phone calls weren't social calls. They were business meetings with international partners. The way he understood my teaching methods better than any principal I'd ever worked for, he'd been studying education from the top level for over a decade. Now, Morgan said, turning to face my father directly, there seems to be some confusion about the Hampton Education Foundation. The funding contract TechEdu Corporation signed clearly states that board leadership positions must be held by certified educators with actual classroom experience. Dad's confident smile started to fade. Jossie Morrison has never taught a single day in any classroom. She has no educational credentials whatsoever. This appointment violates our contractual agreement. Morgan's voice grew colder. Effective immediately, TechEdu Corporation withdraws all funding from the Hampton Education Foundation. The room erupted. People were gasping, whispering frantically to each other. Dad's face went from red to purple. I could see his hands shaking as the magnitude of what just happened hit him. Aaliyah grabbed Jossie's arm, probably calculating how this would affect their social standing. But Morgan wasn't finished. He took another step forward, commanding the attention of every person in that ballroom. Instead, Morgan announced, his voice rising with authority, TechEdu Corporation will establish the Rachel Hampton Excellence in Teaching Foundation, with my wife as chairperson and $10 million in initial funding. $10 million, double what Dad had promised. The crowd was on their feet now. Some people were applauding. The teachers in the room, the education advocates, people who understood what this meant. Others were frantically pulling out their phones, filming everything. I realized later that the entire gala was being live-streamed on Dad's company website. Within hours, the video had millions of views across every social media platform. Teacher's husband destroys father-in-law's retirement gala became a viral sensation overnight. But the immediate aftermath was brutal for my father's family. Dad stood on that stage, still holding the microphone, completely speechless for the first time in his life. The man who had built an empire with his words couldn't find a single thing to say. The scandal destroyed his reputation almost immediately. By Monday morning, 3 major investors had pulled out of Hampton Industries. 2 city contracts were quietly canceled. The business relationships he'd spent 40 years building crumbled in a matter of days. Aaliyah filed for divorce exactly 28 days later. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she couldn't handle being married to someone who had become a social pariah overnight. Jossie's law firm, the prestigious downtown firm she'd been so proud of, quietly let her go within 6 weeks. Clients started requesting different representation when they realized she was connected to the viral video. Her career never recovered. Dad never spoke to me again. Not once. But honestly, I didn't miss those conversations where he made me feel small for caring about kids' futures. The foundation Morgan created in my name became everything I dreamed of and more. We've funded literacy programs in over 300 schools across 12 states. We've provided technology to rural districts that couldn't afford basic computers. We've trained over 5,000 teachers in innovative educational methods. The viral video started something bigger than either of us expected. A movement called #Teachers Deserve Better that led to actual policy changes in several states. Teacher salaries increased. Educational funding was prioritized. Respect for educators became a real conversation instead of just lip service. That night, driving home in Morgan's Tesla, yes, he had a Tesla the whole time, parked in the underground garage of his downtown penthouse that I'd never seen, I asked him the question that had been burning in my mind. Why did you hide all of this from me? He smiled that same quiet smile I fell in love with 3 years ago in that coffee shop. I needed to know you loved Morgan the person, not Morgan the CEO. I've had too many relationships where people saw dollar signs instead of me. Then he got serious. Plus, I wanted to understand education from your perspective, not mine. From the trenches, not the boardroom. You taught me more about what kids actually need than 15 years of corporate research ever could. We're still married, still working together every single day, still proving that teaching isn't just a job, it's the foundation of everything our society builds on. And sometimes the quiet ones have the loudest voices when it matters most. The best part? Every time I walk into a classroom now, those kids don't see me as just a teacher. They see me as someone who proved that what we do matters, that education can change the world, and that sometimes love and respect are worth more than all the money in the world. If this story showed you that teachers deserve so much more recognition and respect, hit that subscribe button and share this with everyone you know.